Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 11, Prodigal Daughter. Ezri travels to her family home to locate O'Brien and discovers a conspiracy. What did you think of this one?
That was okay.
It's quite boring, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no momentum. And the beginning tricked me. I kept thinking this would be an episode about something else. When we hear O'Brien is missing, I thought, oh, cool, we get to see O'Brien rescue himself from whatever he's gotten himself into. But no, that's not what happened. Well, even before that, I thought it was Bashir O'Brien hangout episode or something because he's waiting for him. Anyway, there was a bunch of false starts, and then instead I thought we were getting an Ezri episode, which would have been good because she hasn't really been fleshed out that much, but then it's not. It's about her family and how things are not doing so well in the family business.
Well, it is an Ezri episode because her family are a reflection of her, I guess. But at the same time, I don't care much about Ezri as a character yet, so I care even less about her family. And you're right, the opening, it seems like it's going to be another O'Brien Bad Day episode, and they are generally pretty good. So they shouldn't have dangled that out front because you got my hopes up way too much.
That sets the bar way too high, so that was a mistake.
That being said, it kind of is a Bad Day O'Brien episode. We just didn't get to see any of the bad stuff that happened to him. He got beat up by Nausicaans.
But then not soon after that, he's pretty chipper identifying an engineering problem. Hey, this is mislabeled. I'm so happy right now.
Well, they have really good medical care, so all his broken bones and wounds and stuff, they can just fix that. He didn't seem bothered at all, to be honest.
No, he looked like he was on vacation. Hang out here for a bit, New Sydney, check out the sights.
Check out the smog and dirt. To jump straight into behind the scenes stuff, it may not surprise you to find out that this episode was seriously plagued with writing problems.
You don't say. Well, you just said, so you do say.
Yes, I did say that. It was originally a story about Cisco traveling into the future and getting into a fight with himself.
What?
And then they changed it around a bunch and couldn't figure out how to make it work. And they reached pretty much the deadline and had to just generate something very quickly.
The only true match for Cisco would be Cisco.
That's why the cat's trying to be Cisco. They talk about Cisco quite sort of disrespectfully. They keep talking about him booting them up the arse and stuff. Lying to him. Bashir was lying to him. O'Brien didn't want to go back to the station. We didn't get a lot of the respect that we usually see from the characters. They kind of didn't seem to like him very much.
The war has strained everybody, I guess. It was weird that Bashir and O'Brien had a line about Cisco's boots.
It's sloppy writing. The same idiom shouldn't be used by separate characters in separate contexts unless one character or could copy it from the other, or they both copy it from somewhere. It's because one writer wrote both lines, I assume.
I was giving them the benefit of the doubt and thought it was intentional to show they're on the same wavelength, that they love each other so much.
This episode is badly written, so... What? Is it badly written? Yeah, I think it is. The Orion Syndicate are there, they're being spooky and bad.
I guess. I didn't really care. We find out that Morika is dead early on, so O'Brien's whole reason for being there is meaningless.
It did sort of transition from him looking for Marika Bilby to the Syndicate conspiracy, but they had no stake in that. Once she was dead, they should have just said, well, let's go home. That's it.
I didn't understand why O'Brien was in danger after we find out Marika's dead. So he's sticking his nose where it's not wanted, I guess.
Well, the Syndicate guys come off like a kid's version of what they think the Mafia is like. They break mining equipment, but it's more like practical jokes, and everyone's sort of spooked by them like they're the boogeyman. It's just weird and hard to care about because it's not believable.
We're so far removed from a character we care about, so the exploits of these people just come off as random and meaningless. You can't throw O'Brien in there without a real connection and have me care.
Well, O'Brien didn't even seem to care.
Right.
I think they're trying to sell the whole Bilby episode still, which wasn't a great episode. It wasn't terrible, I guess. Well, it was very mediocre. And I guess they returned to it because they wanted to really sell that as a touching O'Brien story, and it can't be a one-off. It has to affect him, so they've woven it into this. But it just comes off as too... It's got that small world feeling, because Esri's family was involved with Marika Bilby and the naughty syndicate guy and stuff. The whole plot's way too tightly woven. So it's not credible, and as much as they're trying to sell the whole Bilby family plot, Marika Bilby never appeared on screen other than in a photograph, so the fact that she's apparently horribly murdered is fairly meaningless.
I did like the setup, the idea that O'Brien was tortured by the death of Bilby and how he was responsible for it, and he kept reaching out to Morika. But then it falls apart because of the things you mentioned. We never saw her. She had no screen presence. And then she dies horribly, and then O'Brien doesn't really seem to mind. So it falls apart.
It's very difficult to sell the character caring about someone that the audience almost cannot care for. You've got to make the audience care first before it's easy for the character to believe it. I mean, generally. I mean, Marika Bilby isn't even a character. It's just a name.
And it's barely a name.
Well, it is a name.
Oh, fine.
I don't want to get technical, but it's a, forename and surname, yep.
Maybe it's a nickname. You don't know.
Yes, I don't, because no one knows anything about Marika Bilby. There's a plot hole that I noticed. There's probably loads, but there's one that stuck out to me.
Go ahead.
When O'Brien first arrives, he talks about Marika being donked on the head and chucked in the river, and the policeman sort of says, "Oh, it happens all the time. It's definitely not the Syndicate doing that." I'm paraphrasing, but the basic idea is she was assassinated in the typical manner of the Orion Syndicate.
Yes.
Then at the end, big twist, it was Norvo doing it in a fit of mania.
Yes.
So why was it in the method typically used by the Syndicate? Why was his methodology of murder matching up with the Syndicate's?
He has a Syndicate class ring, and they saw the imprint on her forehead.
It's not Ace Ventura.
Actually had a Columbo episode in mind when I said that.
The method should have been different. But that plot hole is telling of something that was kind of made up in one run. I don't know if it's the case, but if you make up a story linearly and don't go back and fix things and adjust stuff to fit, you get little problems like that.
I always hate when they bring out something and say, oh, this is typical of blah, blah, blah. If they're all aware of these things, they could easily mimic it and hide their tracks. If someone knows how the Orion Syndicate disposes of bodies, why wouldn't you copy them? And so you give them a misleading trail.
That's true, although that still wouldn't apply to this episode because it was not premeditated. And at the same time, why wouldn't the police put some security cameras down by the river? If there's hundreds of people being murdered down there, surely some surveillance would help.
Too much smog. It can't pierce through and capture anything on camera.
Oh, if only there were technology to fix that.
Any other sort of surveillance is too invasive and against the laws of whatever planet this is.
It seemed they were going down the direction of the police being shills for the Syndicate, which then went absolutely nowhere.
Just to throw us off, I think.
I think they were throwing themselves off. I don't know what the point of that was.
Where's this going? I don't know.
We'll find out when we get there. I have one tiny thing that I would like to praise.
I cannot imagine what it would be.
Really? You don't have anything good to say about this episode?
Oh, I have one thing I want to praise, but say yours first.
Okay, it might even be the same. When Norvo says it's impossible for Janelle to have murdered Marika, and it has a great shot of Esri turning to look at him, and you can see the gears grinding in her head, going, hang on. So just that one shot where she's in soft focus in the background and then turns to look at Torvo.
And you can hear
Norvo. Yeah, you can hear the other two bickering over the characters that are actually shown. That tiny bit was well shot, although then Norvo goes off on a monologue about how he decided to do her in, and it kind of went back to being a bit rubbish.
Yeah, then you remember what episode you're watching.
Just that little moment, just when she turns to look at him, and you can see it in her face, hang on, the only way he would be so certain of that is if he did it. Just that little bit, that was pretty good. It constitutes about 5 seconds of screen time. Was that what you were thinking of, or?
It was, and those 5 seconds, that's not quite the ideal ratio for a good episode.
5 seconds to 44 minutes.
I accidentally predicted the twist in this episode, and that's because whenever there's a mention of someone failing to get into art school, I immediately think of Hitler. And so when we find out Norvo didn't get into art school, I thought, oh, he's going to end up to be Space Hitler, just like Ducat. And then he kind of was.
I think what he did and what Hitler did are slightly different in magnitude.
Slightly, but he's on the path to Hitlerdom.
If you say so.
Look, if there's a path to Hitlerdom and one not to Hitlerdom, what he did would be on the Hitlerdom one.
Is this some sort of trope? Failing to get into art school means you turn to the dark side.
The two examples I can think of say yes.
Well, that's a good enough sample set. It's conclusively proven.
Don't fail to get into art school.
People in art school must be really, really cautious with rejecting people.
What if we create the next Hitler?
Every rejection letter we send spawns a demon.
There is a non-zero chance. It happened once.
Esri's mom's name was never mentioned on screen, but it's in the script.
Is it Esri's mom?
No, it's Yanis Tegan. That's super interesting, but there's not a lot in this episode to discuss.
I liked her overbearing language when she was yelling at Norvo.
Yeah, Norval.
When he said, "Oh, I need to clear my head," and she snaps, "Clear your head of what?"
She was a bit overbearing, but
She's supposed to be.
I know. I don't see. What's the point, though? What's the point of anything that happened in this episode?
To fill time.
It's 100% filler, but it really shouldn't be, because it was one chance they had to do something with Esri to develop her backstory. And I mean, they did a little. There was that little dinner scene where she acts goofy.
It's totally wasted.
The whole episode was preoccupied with this weird syndicate conspiracy rubbish that just wasn't interesting. And it was chock-a-block full of them telling us stuff and not showing it. The one thing they actually showed was O'Brien fixing a mining machine, which was actually pretty cool. But of all of the stuff to show, that is almost irrelevant. Didn't even show us Norvo smashing up his paintings.
Yeah. We have a character who gets madly drunk and destroys things, and then we don't see any of it.
And they had to destroy those paintings for the show. They tore them up, so why not do it on camera?
That's a weird choice. All we see is him waking up.
The whole episode is kind of just stoic. It's just dialogue scenes. Which is, I don't mind if it's dialogue heavy episode, but I have to care. For example, the episode Waltz, where Cisco and Ducat are stuck in a cave, is very dialogue heavy. It's also very good.
Because it has tension. There's no tension here.
Not really. Even the characters don't have any tension. Even Esri didn't seem to care after her brother was a murderer.
And her conclusion to that was weird. Oh, I should know everything and should have spotted this. And then before, when she tells her other brother, oh, you should abandon your life and run away from your responsibilities.
Esri is terrible at her job. She can't read a person to save herself. And how could you spot someone being a murderer? If it was that easy, then police work would be very easy.
Well, he did fail out of art school. Or failed to get into art school.
Not everyone has your level of genius in that regard. Well, they do now. If you're listening to this, now you know the technique for spotting crazy people in advance.
Oh, I have a major problem with this episode that we haven't brought up. And that's
Go for it.
the time it takes from when you're arrested from a murder to the end of a trial can be really long.
Yeah.
And she stays there until the end of the trial.
Could be a decade.
Maybe they have really swift and efficient justice system.
It's the future, so yeah, all the courts are clear because there's not much crime. What with the police not caring about anything. I was gonna bring this up because she says he got 30 years,
Yeah.
and O'Brien says he got off lightly.
Yeah.
Is that lightly?
Maybe in their time.
30 years is harsher than a lot of life sentence stuff nowadays, which is often 25 years.
Maybe O'Brien is pro capital punishment.
It seemed like that's the angle they were coming from. As in, oh, good thing he didn't get the death sentence. But I can't see the death sentence being a thing in the Star Trek universe.
It doesn't have to be a thing, but there could be supporters of it, people who want it back.
So it's not a Federation world, so maybe they still have the death sentence. It just seems very
Regressive?
Yeah. Ezri also didn't seem that bothered. I don't know. O'Brien didn't seem that bothered. No one seemed to care. No one cared about this episode.
Including us.
Including the viewers.
No one is invested, so how could we be invested?
The writers weren't invested.
The writers' boot prints were all over this script. I don't know what that means.
More like their butt prints. Because it was written on toilet paper.
Yeah, that works in a pinch.
Moving on. Do you have a quote from this episode?
Mother disapproves of suicide. All that blood on the carpets.
Casually joking about suicide.
Not the sort of thing this show usually does.
Yeah. And I don't know. She's a therapist. She's supposed to be. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really come off that way, but later on when she's saying, if only there were some clues. Maybe stuff like drinking himself silly and casually joking about suicide are clues.
We don't know his baseline, though. Maybe he is fond of morbid humor.
It's
and
true.
Gets drunk all the time.
Well,
he does offer her alcohol as soon as she gets there.
Getting drunk all the time is also a clue. But you're right on the humor thing. Different people are different.
It's only a sign when it's a deviation.
They have phasers, so he could just phaser himself. There'd be no blood then.
Take some pills.
Wait, why are they Syndicate dumping bodies in the river?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they could disintegrate them instantly.
Crime should be so easy.
I don't understand.
Okay, well, in his case, he's not a true criminal and he wanted to be caught subconsciously. So that's why he didn't phaser the body.
Yeah, okay, yeah, he didn't premeditate it. But the police guy said, oh, it happens all the time. As if the Syndicate are throwing people in the river.
It's their calling card.
Oh, okay. If you want to get rid of a body in Star Trek world, there's 101 ways to get rid of it in about 20 seconds, which leave absolutely no evidence unless you have a tricorder and are looking for the exact right kind of particle.
But they want people to know. They want to intimidate them.
I think it's intimidating enough when people disappear. But
you can always suggest that they weren't murdered. There's no body. There's no what is that? Corpus delictum? I don't know. Latin.
Okay, well, whatever.
Without a body, you could say they went to go live on a farm in a faraway planet.
Yes, that's still threatening, though. It's not like there's any doubt in people's minds, oh, that guy annoyed the Syndicate, and now he's gone to live elsewhere.
That makes sense. If I annoyed a powerful group that was very capable of killing me, I would vacate town.
They can still do better than chucking bodies in rivers. That's all I'm saying. Criminal organizations nowadays do better than that. And I realize now that the term better, if I give the wrong intonation, obviously.
It's a throwback. They missed the old days, the good old days, when people threw bodies in rivers. None of this fancy phaser and stuff.
The Syndicate really are just calling it in. They don't care. They intimidated the mining family by putting a wrongly labeled chip in the machine. Oh, that'll show them.
We moved all your files into a different directory.
They'll be on the phone to tech support for hours.
Took the batteries out of your mouse. Switched all the keys on the keyboard.
Cling film over the toilets.
Calculator and Jello.
Spiked all the replicators with cyanide. It's a good prank. We've just been talking about organized crime for about 5 minutes, so we should probably move on to the next episode and forget this one, which, by the way, I actually did. This episode was completely new to me.
There's nothing worth remembering here.
Not really, so I've forgotten it at least once. I can forget it again, and so can you.
Let's hope.
On we go.
Let's do it.